Daily Ledger contributor Kimberly Dvorak. All right, Kimberly, we all said they weren't on the ballot, but they were on the ballot, and that was Obamacare. People were concerned about that. Voters were. They were also concerned, and they still are, about the economy. But the third most important was immigration / amnesty / the border. This was critical during the election.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the Democrats, actually, their top target to eject from office was the Secretary of State for Kansas, and his name is Chris Kobach. And they went after him with a lot of resources, and the end net effect was he won by a landslide 18 points in Kansas. So that kind of shows you what the voters were actually feeling at the ballot box after seeing a blitzkrieg of ads, you know, challenging the president's authority to even go through and create some sort of amnesty or free pass for the next couple of years through executive order.
Okay, so when you step back and you kind of zoom out a little bit, it should be no surprise to anyone that a majority of voters, a majority of Americans, think that the country is heading in the wrong direction, on the wrong track. And so all these issues kind of feed into that, including immigration.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that when the American people have seen their wages just flatline, they're looking at, you know, an increase, you know, it costs more money to go to the grocery store, it costs more money to buy a car, costs more money for electricity. They're seeing that, they're seeing their wages flatline, and they look at the possibility of seeing, I mean, the numbers vary, 11 million, 20 million, 30 million. You're going to see these folks come into the country and apparently come out of the shadows. I don't know where they've been, but apparently come out of the shadows. And what's that going to do? That's going to create another glut in the employment sector, and these people are still going to have a hard time getting by. That's where you saw the wrong track, and that's how I think the immigration played into this.
And we're also paying for, through our taxes, goods and services that are going to people who are here illegally, not necessarily paying into the system. But in Oregon, a curious event happened during the election, pretty liberal state, and they had the issue as a Measure 88 on the ballot, and it was to whether or not to grant driver's licenses to illegal immigrants. What happened there?
Yeah, this was a big shock, I think, to the Democrats in Oregon. You've had everyone. This measure received the most votes on the entire ballot, and even though they legalized marijuana in that state, voted for a fourth term for their Democratic, very liberal Democrat governor, they came out in great numbers saying they would not provide driver's licenses to illegal immigrants in their state. So you had, you know, a whole bunch of liberal issues pass on the ballot, but you had Measure 88 that captured the most no votes. And I think moving forward, it's a lesson to some of the other states who are considering to, you know, in essence, legalize these folks by using a driver's license. Because as we know, most people use driver's license for identification, to cash checks, to, you know, jump on an airplane, get into federal buildings, so on and so forth. So people assume that once you have that piece of identification, that you're in the country legally, and it's also kind of a little bit of an issue for future employers for these people, because they're more likely to get a job with that driver's license.
This is the duplicitous nature of liberals, isn't it? And they want to give ID, photo ID, that is driver's licenses, to illegal immigrants, which we know, as you just pointed out, is a gateway to many things, including possibly voting. Yet at the same time, they want to stop voter ID. I mean, it makes absolutely no sense. I guess they can have their cake and eat it too. But you know, it wasn't that long ago, Kimberly, that we were talking about in this country, it seems like it was a long time ago, maybe about, 6 years or so, about extending the border fence that now exists in Southern California, which has worked extremely well. If you talk to any border agent, they will tell you illegal immigration has been cut down to almost nil comparative to the statistics of years ago in that sector. We wanted to build like 700 miles of fence, and that's not even being talked about right now.
Yeah, well, in 2006, under the Bush administration, they passed the Secure Fence Act, and in that, they were supposed to secure roughly 700 miles of the southern border with Mexico. That fence, included in that fence, was double-layer fencing. Right. However, once that passed, it was actually, you know, they said they needed about $10.1 billion to secure the southern border. But GOP senator from Texas Kate Bailey Hutchinson came out and gave the discretion to the Department of Homeland Security to decide if a fence was appropriate or not.
Yeah.
And of course, it wasn't appropriate in most cases. So
Huge mistake, right?
Yeah.
It never got built. And by the way, $10 billion is a drop in the bucket now compared to what we're trying to do at the border, trying to manage this flood of illegals.
Yeah, and keep in mind that once this bill passed, what happened to it and how this bill languished was in the Appropriations Committee, where they're supposed to appropriate how much money will go there. They did not appropriate the $10.1 billion. And over time, this is a way that politicians all over can kowtow to the Chamber of Commerce and other lobbying groups on this and say, look, we voted to pass and build a fence, but when it actually got down to building the fence, nothing happened because it got bogged down in appropriation. And, this was under a GOP administration that this happened. So it's important to know both parties are playing with this, and both parties are looking for votes here.
Yeah, the American people want it. They want a secure border, yet neither party wants to give it to them.
No.
Kimberly, thanks.
Thank you.
Coming up next, the Supreme